Today I'm going to talk about how Western governments are planning to plunder post-war Ukraine. Western corporations are seeing the war as a profit-making enterprise. They're looking at ways that they can suck money out of Ukraine and exploit Ukrainian labor, hurting the Ukrainian people. So while they accuse us, people who are against the proxy war, of supposedly not caring about the Ukrainian people, it's actually Western governments and Western corporations that are making plans right now as we speak to exploit the Ukrainian people, to make profits off of the suffering of the Ukrainian people. Today I'm going to talk about a report that I co-authored at multipolarista.com. It's titled "West Prepares to Plunder Post-War Ukraine with Neoliberal Shock Therapy, Privatization, Deregulation, Slashing Worker Protections." This is based on an investigation that I did with a friend of mine, Jake Callio, and we found these documents that were published by something called the Ukraine Recovery Conference. This was held in Lugano, Switzerland on July 4th and 5th, 2022, this July. And in this conference, top officials from Western governments met, including top officials from the Ukrainian government, met and made plans to impose brutal right-wing capitalist reforms on Ukraine in order to profit from Ukrainian labor and Ukrainian natural resources. It's similar to the kind of neoliberal shock therapy, the capitalist shock therapy imposed on the former Soviet Union, on Russia, after the overthrow of the Soviet Union in the 1990s. And according to UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Organization, they published a report acknowledging that the Western capitalist neoliberal shock therapy imposed on Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union led to millions of excess deaths. That's millions of deaths that would not have happened otherwise, along with huge numbers of children suffering from malnutrition and poverty. So in this conference that was held this July, I'll talk more about it in a second, these Western governments and corporations met, and they planned to cut labor laws, cut workers' protections in Ukraine, open markets, they say with this very libertarian rhetoric, drop tariffs to weaken the competitiveness of local Ukrainian industries, deregulate local Ukrainian industries so they can be gobbled up by Western capital, and then sell state-owned enterprises to private investors. That means sell Ukrainian assets to Western corporations. These are the policies that Ukraine's supposed allies are planning to impose on it. This is what Western capitalists do to their so-called allies. They exploit them and gobble up and exploit their economy. By the way, for people who don't know, because I've gotten questions about this, sometimes it confuses people. When I say neoliberal, or anyone says neoliberal, it's not a reference to the left in any way politically. Neoliberalism is a right-wing economic philosophy that has its origins in the late 1970s and the 1980s with the rise of Margaret Thatcher in Britain, Ronald Reagan in the United States, Pinochet, the fascist US-backed dictator installed in a CIA coup in Chile. Neoliberalism refers to a particular kind of capitalism where there's basically no state regulation. The idea is that the solution to every political problem is privatization, deregulation, selling state assets to private corporations, freeing the market, right? It's this very libertarian right-wing rhetoric. Neoliberalism is not about the left in any way. So when we say that, there are neoliberal Democrats, this isn't to say that it's a certain kind of left-wing Democrat. No, this is center-right or right-wing Democrats who are trying to impose this ultra-capitalist shock therapy. And this is exactly what happened in the former Soviet Union in the 1990s.